Okay, welcome back to House Human Services this afternoon. This afternoon, we are continuing to take testimony on H91, an act relating to emergency temporary shelter. And we have folks here who happen to be colleagues of Representative McGill, but they also deal with youth homelessness in particular. And so we welcome them. We saw them in committee back a little while ago. At least I remember Jesse was here. I can't remember if I think Zoe was here. I'm not sure about Ellen. Yeah. Welcome back to the committee, and uh, the floor is yours. We would love to hear about the impacts of homelessness on youth and also what your organization does to assist youth. So I'm not sure who is going to take the lead, but feel free to give it a go.
Great. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. And first of all, thank you all for inviting us to testify today. My name is Ellen Lehman, and I am the statewide director of the Youth Development Program here in Vermont. We go by YDP for short. We are in a transitional period at YDP right now, as I just took on the role of director just about 2 months ago. So therefore, we asked the former director, Jesse Warren, to join us today as well, and he graciously agreed to do so. So Jesse worked as a YDP coordinator in the program for a number of years and has served as the director for the past 2.5 years, and I will let my team introduce themselves.
I'm Jesse. Nice to meet you and see you all again. Thanks for having us.
Hi all, I am Zoe Souter. I am YDP's Youth Advocacy Coordinator. I'm thrilled to be here today, so thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So today we'd like to provide a brief overview of the Youth Development Program, highlighting the need for including youth ages 19 to 24 that are exiting state's care to join the list of people eligible for the GA Motel Hotel Voucher Program. And we would ask that you please hold your questions to the end, and we will certainly try to answer them after we conclude our presentation today. Next slide, please. What is the Youth Development Program, or YDP for short? YDP is Vermont's extended care program for youth that, excuse me, for teens and young adults who have experience with the foster care system. Our mission is to ensure that youth with foster care experience enter adulthood with the necessary supports and that they need to build productive and fulfilling lives. By investing in youth, YDP promotes healthier and better connected young adults, families, and communities. Our philosophy. We believe in providing services that are strength-based and fully driven by the youth's own identified goals. YDP is primarily a voluntary program and not an emergent program. Next slide, please. Who we serve. Youth ages 14 to 23 who are currently in custody or exited custody at age 16 or older are eligible for case management, funding, and advocacy opportunities through YDP in the state of Vermont. Youth can connect with a YDP program at any time before they turn age 23. We would note that YDP serves about 450 youth statewide annually, which we're quite proud of. And yet at the same time, we are clear that this is actually only about 40% of the youth that YDP could serve. Next slide, please.
Your slides are cutting off. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Sorry. Go ahead, Jesse.
Sorry, I wasn't able to get off mute when I was in the full view, so technical difficulty there. So, as Ellen said, YDP serves the entire state in every corner and crevice, and we're very proud of that, being able to reach youth who are in urban areas as well as rural areas, because sometimes the need is higher or often goes undetected in those areas of the state. And so this slide is going to show you exactly how we offer those services to every youth who's eligible in the state. So Ellen and Zoe and I currently work at Elevate Youth Services with Jubilee in Washington County. We have a contract with the Department for Children and Families to administer the youth development program. So we then have subcontracts with youth mental health agencies in every county of the state. And those agencies are the folks responsible for hiring the case managers. We help support and train all of those folks, but we partner with agencies you've probably heard of, like Spectrum Youth and Family Services, the Lamoille Restorative Center, Sunrise Family Resource Center in Bennington. And so this graph right here shows you the list of our partner agencies. So we call our case managers youth development coordinators, fancy name. They partner with youth to help them set goals, explore personal interests, connect with natural supports, and transition to adulthood successfully. The services that case managers are offering really depends on the age, honestly, of the youth. Because we serve such a wide age range, 14 to 22, youth who are 14 and 15 often have wraparound services. So they're really set up with support at school. They have a clinician, they have DCF, they might be working with Higher Ability when they want to get a job and stuff like that. Where things tend to fall off, as we all know, is when a youth gets a bit older, when they get to be into that transitional stage of like 17, 18 to 22, they lose their DCF worker. Often in a lot of situations, they don't have natural supports. Maybe they don't have biological parents, they don't have mentors. And so that's really when the YDP case manager steps in as the primary case manager to help youth with all of that transitional age stuff that their peers usually have their parents to help them with, such as getting a car, getting their first apartment, getting a job, housing, stuff like that. A unique aspect of YDP that I'm really proud of and happy that we can provide to youth is that we have a lot more financial resources than normal case managers. I won't say we have enough money, because we certainly don't, but we have flexible funding that we can use to support youth. They have to apply through a grant. Really, it's to support anything towards their goals. So if a youth wants to get their permit or their driver's license or go to prom and they need, a tux or something like that, anything that their peers would be able to do that they can't do just because of the situation that they're in DCF and money is a barrier. We want to be the program that breaks down the barriers so that youth are able to access normalcy activities, basic needs things, just like their peers can. We also help facilitate extended foster care, which means that if a youth chooses to stay on after age 18 with their DCF worker, they're able to have that additional support and other financial supports as well. Something that's not on here that I wanted to talk about as well is a couple of additional supports. We have an independent living stipend that we're able to provide to youth who are over 18. We don't have enough funding to distribute this to every person. My hope is that in the future, we will be able to get a universal income for youth in foster care so that anyone can receive this stipend. Right now, we have a limited budget for that, but it's $500 a month for youth who need help with their basic needs, maybe for buying groceries, towards their rent, towards a car payment, stuff like that. We also have a partnership with the Vermont State Housing Authority to distribute 30 foster youth to independence vouchers, which are essentially very similar to Section 8 housing vouchers, but they're intended for youth only and only for youth who have been in foster care with foster care experience. So the eligibility pool for who is able to access those vouchers is only our YDP participants. We currently have a long wait list for those vouchers as well. We only have 30 that we can issue right now. And finally, in terms of our services overall that we provide, we feel like it's really important for youth to be able to share their story. So Zoe takes the lead on that. That's their role with the agency, is providing leadership opportunities to youth and teaching them how to strategically share their story. We want to empower them to make sure they feel like they can share opinions about the system and talk with the DCF commissioner and things like that to feel like they can make actionable change towards bettering the child welfare system.
Great, thank you, Jesse. I'll talk a little bit about those advocacy efforts. So our case coordinators, who have lots of one-on-one engagement with the youth in our program, will connect me with the youth who are interested in sharing their story, gaining leadership skills, or participating in advocacy related to child welfare across New England. We do this through a few different avenues. First, we contract with the Child Welfare Training Partnership at UVM to provide youth feedback via panels to new DCF workers, new foster parents, new guardian ad litems, and the like. We also partner with a few other community organizations to get youth feedback through surveys, focus groups, panels, written opportunities on issues like how healthcare outcomes for foster youth could be improved, among many other issues. YDP is strongly guided by our Youth Advisory Board, which is made up of about 8 to 12 youth, depending on the month, and about 5 adult supporters. They very much guide our programs, our events, our 5-year plan, and take on a year-long project to improve the foster care system in Vermont. And this year, they're highly considering tackling housing as their project topic for the year, especially since as of October of this year, which is the beginning of our fiscal year, about 39 youth in our program have reported as homeless or unhoused. We also host an annual summit in April called the Youth Empowerment Summit for youth in the program to gain life skills, to connect with each other, to learn about their identity, and to have fun. And then lastly, the youth in our program occasionally get the opportunity to travel across New England to represent the state of Vermont at conferences, or to Oregon for a pretty phenomenal 6-week-long internship with one of our national partners. Next slide. Here is a quick data snapshot for you all. These graphics measure youth engagement by instances of participation between fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24, which ended in September. And for those 2 years, between those 2 years, we saw a 228% increase in youth participation around leadership and advocacy. And we at YDP also offered nearly a 140% increase in opportunities available to youth. And here you can see the direct increase between the two images, as we've separated out by DCF district as well to determine which youth we are able to connect with and where we could serve to do better. And then as of right now, February of 2025, we've already doubled the amount of engagement from where we were this time last year, which I think is pretty cool. Next. So that's the end of the presentation. I do have a couple of stats for you all around homelessness as an issue that I'm happy to share. I mentioned this a couple minutes ago, but as of right now, for fiscal year 25, which started in October, we have about 39 youth who have reported as unhoused, which is about 11% of the folks we serve. And as Ellen mentioned earlier, we only serve about 40% of eligible youth in the state, so I imagine the number of unhoused folks who are eligible for our program is actually quite a bit higher. For fiscal year 24, 82 youth reported as unhoused, and then we currently have 3 youth who are actively self-reported as unhoused.
Thank you very much. Now the time for questions? I'm just checking because I just wanted to make sure that they're done. Because they want
Resting down, not.
Yes.
Sorry. That's sorry.
Yes.
Yes,
We'd be happy to field some questions.
Okay, good. Thank you. Representative Steady.
How is this currently funded? How is this currently funded? Is it federal?
We have a combination of federal and state funding. primarily through the Chafee grant.
What's the grant?
Chafee,
Chafee.
A-
Yes.
How do I spell it? Okay.
I think it's CHAFFEE. I'm making that up right now, I think.
Got it. Thank you.
So I'm curious, since you serve about 40% of the eligible youth, how do youth find out about you, and how is it prioritize? How do you prioritize, like, which youth need your support more if you can only serve, you have a finite number of youth that you can serve?
You want me to take this, Ellen?
Sure. Thank you.
So our contract says that all youth who are entering custody at 14 must be referred to our program. So that's primarily how we get our referrals. We get them at 14 from DCF or whenever they come into custody before the age of 18. It's not a program that we can usually go out and table at events for and stuff like that. Because of that, our referrals are coming directly from DCF. We prioritize youth who are in the transitional age. So we prioritize 17 and 18-year-olds. But in order for us to serve more youth, we would need more staff. We only have 16 youth development coordinators in the whole state. And so we would need, more than double that if we're serving only 40% of eligible youth right now in order to serve everyone that's eligible.
Thank you. Go ahead, Representative Garofano.
Anne was before me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. On slide 7, you mentioned the increased rate of engagement with the youth. And I was wondering what contributes to that?
I'm happy to take that. Part of what contributes to that number is having somebody in the advocacy coordinator role full time. There was a while where we had a decent gap in terms of months where someone wasn't in this role, and so advocacy fell off. And as I'm sure you all know, it takes a lot of work to engage youth because you need to establish safe and secure relationships for them to trust you and to build that relationship with them, to then want to engage in advocacy efforts and to feel safe to share their story. And so a lot of it has been having someone in the role who can be there consistently for young folks to help them feel safe enough to open up about that stuff. Additionally, tracking those numbers is really important. I've been fairly consistent about keeping a really updated database, so we have a clear picture of who we're reaching and who we're not. Aside from that, we've really tried to increase our social media presence to reach youth who are in our program in areas of the state where we haven't had a lot of engagement, so more rural, and then connecting with our case coordinators more one-on-one to encourage them to promote advocacy opportunities among young people, for sure.
Sorry. Can you also share, Jesse, you said there's 16 youth development coordinators across the state. Is there anyone at DCF that has a role like this that does a similar work as you all do?
Yes, we actually work closely with Amanda Churchill-Kipp, who is one of the policy and practices specialists. So she oversees the youth development program at Elevate, and we work closely with her.
Does she provide she's not on the ground, she does more policy work at DCF, correct?
Yep, there is no one on the ground, but really working closely with the DCF workers themselves.
Thank you.
Representative Donahue and then Steady.
So we have a bill on the wall about funds for room and board support or contribution for students who are going for higher education, maybe don't need the tuition, they got scholarship and so forth. It sounds to me from what you're saying that would be an eligible request or category, but probably not something that you have adequate funds for, or would be a priority for if there's somebody who, you know, has no place to live. Would that be accurate? If there were money, that might be within your scope, but probably wouldn't be a priority and your limited funds.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sorry, it kind of meandered. That's the question. So, in terms of the independent living, resource that you described and said, but it's limited, you can't. So in terms of priorities, in theory, would that be something that would be an eligible category if it was a youth who got a scholarship for secondary education but needed the living resources? But because of your financial constraints, probably would not be able to be a priority, or would not happen very often. Is that a reasonable assumption? I'm trying to interpret from what you said.
Yes, I hear what you're saying. That's correct. Right now, we're not able to offer it to everybody. Folks who are, you know, would say literally homeless, sleeping in a car, you know, stuff like that would be prioritized for the resources. But we also don't want to discount the need for folks that you're speaking of, people who still experienced foster care and are doing really well, but would still do better with that $500 stipend. So this is excellent. Someone, you know, got accepted into school, they got a scholarship, but that doesn't mean that they still have the financial resources that they need. And so we don't limit it. We don't limit the stipend to people who are literally homeless. Anyone can access it. It's just that we would need more funding to be able to do that, because I agree with you. Oftentimes, youth who are doing really well in the systems of care sort of fall by the wayside, and they don't get as much attention or enough as financial support as they need, because there's, you know, DCF workers and case managers who are putting out fires all day and who are helping people find housing and helping people who are really, really struggling. So we need to make sure that we can distribute the resource to everybody, not just those who are hitting rock bottom.
Representative Betty and then Representative McGuire.
Let's say, it's a question, an 18-year-old's parents say, okay, you're 18 now, get out. And they call you and say, hey, I'm living in my car. Do they have to be a foster child, or any 18-year-old that's been kicked out of their, I know somebody who did it. So would you help them? Or do they have to be under the category of a foster child, or just an 18-year-old in need?
So I could tackle this one.
Okay.
We certainly would try to be supportive to any young person that reaches out to us, whether or not they're eligible for YDP. But what the situation you've described is not someone who would fit the eligibility requirements for our program. Our program is very specifically designed to address the needs of youth who have been in foster care and connected to the foster care system. So if there was someone who contacted us who was 18 who had no connection with the foster care system, but they were homeless or they were struggling with financial security or various other things, what we would do in that situation is we would make a referral to them to one of the other agencies, either Elevate Youth Services, where we are currently housed, or if it was in our area in Barre, or as Jesse noted in the beginning, we have a lot of relationships with nonprofits throughout the state. And so depending on where the young person lived, we would make a connection with that. That actually, a situation like that came up very recently. We get contacted frequently from community members or young people who are struggling, who are asking, am I eligible? Am I not? And if I'm not, what are the other resources I can look at tapping into? So this does come up.
Thank you.
Related to that?
Yeah, it's related.
Okay.
What my job is like we all kind of sit in the same big room. Is the Vermont Coalition of Runaway and Homeless Youth Programs. So we do the same thing at Elevate Youth and distribute funds. So that youth would be eligible for funds for help and support through our program. So they would, we have our sub-grantees who are our Elevate Youth Services that we're housed under as the local operator, but there's NECA, NECIs, all over the state.
who provide support. So they're just,
Have to put it out
Yeah.
there.
there's different, just a different source of funds for the two different populations.
Representative McGuire.
Yeah. I was just looking at the numbers between the fiscal year 23 and 24, and obviously there's a significant increase, about 250%. What do you believe are some of the main factors to the increase in participation in your services?
I can certainly speak to that. I think part of it is that youth are becoming more engaged, just in general, across the state, across the country. They're interested in making good change. I also think that we put a lot of effort towards connecting with our case coordinators and really pushing the importance of youth advocacy, and having youth voice in our program to really guide our program. Aside from that, I think making the opportunities more accessible to young people. So a lot of the panels and surveys or focus groups are done over Zoom, so that youth across the state can access those opportunities without having to navigate things like transportation. So it's really a multifaceted answer. There are a lot of different components that go into increasing those numbers, but each of them are individually very important.
Great, thank you.
I had a question on one of the bullet points on your slide that talked about extended foster care, supporting former foster parents and other supportive adults for youth beyond the age of 18. I'm just, this kind of falls under the category of wondering, because I know that DCF has some provisions for supporting youth after 18 if they're engaged in an educational program. And so I'm just wondering about the use of your funds for kids in extended foster care. Are those youth who are not engaged in an educational program? So likely, I guess, then wouldn't be eligible for that extended care through DCF?
Yeah, there's a couple options depending on the situation, which is great. What happens most frequently is the situation that you described. So, for example, if there's a youth who turned 18 and maybe they're behind in school, a lot of the youth who we're working with are on IEPs, extra help, and so they're behind in school a lot of the time. So maybe the 18-year-old is still in high school, they're in their senior year or their junior year, and they're with a foster parent, and it's going really well. They're getting a lot of support. The extended care agreement is designed so that they can continue to get that support while they finish school. The alternative would be at 18, if they choose to exit care and don't extend their foster care experience, they will no longer be able to stay in that foster home that is paid for through the state and through DCF, in which case they would not have a home and they would not have the supports in place to be able to finish school, such as like the transportation, they need to have housing in order to be able to go to school. So there's that one option. Alternatively, we have an extended care program called the Adult Living Partner Agreement. And I would say we have around 30 of those active at any given time throughout the state. We have an unlimited that we're able to facilitate, but the Adult Living Partner is funded through DCF as well. Any youth who is over the age of 18 who can identify a supportive adult over the age of 25 who can pass a background check and who's not a biological parent. So often this is the parent of a friend or an older sibling or a grandparent. If they have a room available for that youth, we can help facilitate an extended care agreement that way so that the youth can move into that home. And there's funding going towards room and board and stuff like that. The third option for extended care is that independent living stipend, which we talked about. So that's the $500 stipend that can go towards youth needs and promoting independence.
Thank you. Representative Donahue.
Thank you. Yes, related to the first part of that question, the extended foster care, is that limited to kids in foster care who reach 18 and are continuing education, or is it based on the foster parent wanting to help further and getting that support? Because I may be forgetting or remembering wrong. I was here when we passed that new category, and I didn't remember it being restricted to finishing or continuing education.
It is.
It,
I think it is, but
okay.
As far as I know, that I think that would be more of a DCF question,
Yeah.
but
yeah.
yeah, they've been in school.
That's
Thank
my
you.
understanding as well. The other two programs that Jesse described, the ALP program, the Adult Living Provider, and the other program that's the Independent Living Stipend, that people need to have productive time, but it could be that they are working or they dropped out of school or they're doing other things. So we do provide funding in those situations, but that aren't necessarily tied to actually attending school consistently.
Thank you all for being here today and appreciate the work you're doing with youth. And this was really new learning for me in terms of understanding what your organization does and how it does it in supporting youth who are in foster care and leaving foster care. So thanks very much, and thank you to Jubilee for suggesting that we have you here today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time and the opportunity to describe our program and advocate and testify on behalf of the vulnerable youth that we serve here in the YDP program. So thank you all for this opportunity, and we appreciate you providing this chance for us to speak on this issue and to advocate for the needs of those we serve.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. So folks, our next witness is a person with lived experience, and she has sketchy internet connection. So she is driving here, and is obviously, encountering some bad weather getting here. So, we're going to make sure that we, hear from her, but it's going to be a few minutes before she gets here. And then after her, we have Paul Dragon and Linda Anderson. Are they in the building, Lori, or are they going to be Zooming?
Might not let them in.
I think they may be Zooming. I think that the group is saying that Paul Dragon was going to be Zooming in.
Was going to be Zooming?
Yesterday, that's what he said.
Oh, okay. The reason I'm asking is whether or not they were able to come a little early. And then when Shelby gets here, then we could kind of switch her out. We'll see what we can do about that. So we can go offline.